Getting ready for some lively book readings this afternoon. Hello and welcome. We're just waiting for a few people to come and we're going to start at 5 o'clock. Hello, Mrs. Birch. Good to see you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. Grab yourself a glass. I have a glass of bubbly water. Don't really drink alcohol, but in celebration, a glass of Perrier. Okay, so let's wait for a minute or two. Let's see. Someone shows up, another person shows up. It's really sunny outside. So I know everybody's out there enjoying the sunshine this afternoon. All right, so 5 o'clock, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for the book reading of Mrs. Somebody what she did for that ring. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. I'm really excited. It's my first fiction, first romance novel. So it's a great, exciting time to be writing fiction. So what I'll do, now that we've started, oh, hi Colette, good to see you. I'm first going to introduce you to my books for those who will tune in and they're not familiar with all the books I've written over the years. First, I'll start with an introduction to the books. So the first book I wrote was Escape from Ireland, and this describes adventures in Ireland when I lived there for almost 7 years as a new immigrant. Couldn't get Ireland out of my head, so I had to write about it. Lots of jokes in this book and adventures in Ireland. The next book I wrote, Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire, and this talks about what it was like as a newcomer to Toronto. So I left Ireland during the recession and moved to the big city of Toronto. So this book talks about surviving in the big city and the culture shock. The next one I wrote is called Red Car Long Legs, Adventures in California and Beyond. And Red Car Long Legs talks about when I lived in Southern California and I traveled frequently to Central and South America for work. Lots of adventure in this book. Another publication, Drivé or Dérivé in French, and Drivé talks about what it's like going back to Trinidad and Tobago, my country of birth, and visiting over the years. I left in 1992 and everything has changed. So Drivé, a Trini expat, comes home. I talk about going back for Carnival, going back for Christmas, my dad's funeral, different occasions, and also taking foreign friends back to visit. So Drivé, a Trini expat, comes home. Another publication, Where Are My Car Keys? I wrote this book when my mother died of Alzheimer's disease, and of course she was elderly too. She died at 85. But this book was a form of healing for me. It helped to cope with my mother's death, and I talk about how our family coped over the years when we saw her slow demise to Alzheimer's disease. I also wrote the children's companion book, Is That My Granny? As told through the eyes of my nephew. My nephews watched their grandmother as she suffered from Alzheimer's disease, and her body changed, her character changed. So Is That My Granny? It's my first illustrated children's book, and it can be used to help explain the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease to small children, because children observe everything, and it would be good to let them know what's going on, but in a simple way, if you have a grandparent or great-grandparent who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. So these are some of the books that I've published over the years. And the new one, I have a blown-up version of the cover here, Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. So it's my first fiction. Now let me see, I'm going to show you the book trailer. So let's get that going. I'm going to share the screen with you and see if you see the trailer. Yeah, let's see how we're going to do that. Oh, it's not coming up. Are you seeing the trailer? Tell me in the comment section. Please tell me if you're seeing the book trailer in the comment section. Hi Jill, hi Judith. Good to see you. Right, now let's see. The trailer is not coming up. That's okay. What I'll do, I will read the back of the book, what we have as a description on the back of the book. Jasmine leaves home for university and wonders how many boys she will sleep with before finding a husband. Joining 4 other girls, the quest to become Mrs. Somebody continues as they graduate, moving to jobs in the big city. Trials of internet courtship, speed dating, matchmakers, and chance encounters bring our heroines into the messy world of romance. Stories of passion and pursuit reveal the great lengths some women would go to get that ring and beat the biological clock. Is the search more exciting than marriage? That is the question throughout the book. So I'm going to read a snippet from the introduction, which tells you a little bit about the chapters in the book. Mrs. Somebody is loosely based on true stories of women I met in my travels spanning the 1990s and through the 2000s. I may have been a good listener over the years because many women would ply me with tales about their dating exploits. And I managed to keep a mental note of some of the sketches which I've used in writing this novel. The plot follows the lives of 5 young women who met in university, and they continue their friendship after graduating into the working world. The novel contains subtle and not so subtle examples of human behavior in North America in the dating and relationship scene. Some would consider this behavior bizarre in other cultures. This includes the lucrative industries built up around using cosmetics and adjusting the aging body to regain its youthful appearance. Mrs. Somebody also shows the tug-of-war between contemporary and traditional values, as the questions asked throughout the book are, when will I get married? What should I do next to get married? So that's a snippet from the introduction. And I'll now start with some of the chapters. 2 minutes. Thank you again, everyone, for joining this afternoon. I know you could be many places, so I'm really happy that you joined me today. And for a reward, I'm going to give everybody on the chat a chance to get a copy of the ebook. So I'm going to put my website. Hi, Sachi. I'll put my website. And if you subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com books, I'll have your email and I'll send you a copy of the ebook as a prize, as a reward for joining me this afternoon. How about that? So thank you very much. Now I'm going to read from the first chapter, which I call Freedom. Now remember, we're starting with 18-year-olds. They're just leaving school and all the excitement of going into university. So this is Jasmine, who is the protagonist throughout the book. Wouldn't it be exciting to have a different boyfriend every day of the week? Jasmine asked herself this question as she applied to university in Walter Mac. Even though she considered her household liberal compared to others, she still never felt confident enough to bring boys home because of the scrutiny of her parents and brother. Living on campus offered the opportunity to explore and experiment, and she was determined to make the most of this. Many of her friends were staying close to home and possibly attending the local community college. As her family drove her to Walter Mac University in a small town, everything looked small and neat, and the main street had more bars and restaurants than she'd ever seen in a small area. Jasmine envisioned large crowds of students partying at the bars as her family drove past. When they got to Bennett House, Jasmine stepped back to take a good look at the building. It was a large red brick 5-story structure that housed at least 300 students. Each room came furnished, and she had selected a shared room to have company during her first year. Each floor also had shared bathrooms and a living space where students frequented the TV room. The building also housed a large cafeteria. Jasmine, don't forget to wear clean clothes every day, said her mother. And don't just eat from the dessert bar in the cafeteria. Remember to pick some nutritious vegetables too. Oh, Mom, you're acting like I'm a child. I'm an adult, remember? Jasmine protested. Her brother chimed in too. Mind your manners, Jazz. Can't believe it, but I think I might actually miss you. He gave her a hug, and Jasmine's father hugged his big baby girl. She could swear she saw his eyes water up a bit, but he was hiding it. After long farewells, many hugs, and tearful goodbyes, Jasmine's family left, and she was on her own for the first time. She tried to figure out how to cope, and in a daze, she walked around the cafeteria for something to eat. She was crying. She would have to see all the people around her another day, not that day. As she entered the bathroom down the hallway, an Asian girl walked in. "Hello, I'm Fanny," she said. Jasmine held up her hand and waved sadly. "Where are you from, Fanny?" "I came from Malaysia," she said with a thick accent. "First time, no family. I'm very sad." Jasmine told Fanny it was her first time alone too. She suddenly realized her situation was not unique. Many other students were alone, and they just had to grow up. So how many people here in the chat? Oh, hi, Joanne. How many people here had that experience of going to university and being alone for the first time? Just tell me in the chat box. Put a message there. How many of you had that experience? You know, you leave home at 18 or 19. Put a message for me in the chat box. Yes, anybody? Put a message. Many listeners have lived in student housing. You know how crazy it could be in student housing. Okay. So now I'm going to, oh yes, Jill, that was you, yes. Student housing, student parties. We're going to read about some of them now, because all the girls start off in the dorm on campus. So this chapter or this section is called First Try. It wasn't long before Jasmine met an extremely good-looking international student, Arif from Pakistan. Arif was the student mentor and house supervisor at the dorm. He was in graduate school and he had a charismatic flair. All the girls liked him. He was tall and muscular with longish hair that hung in front of his right eye, and he would constantly brush the hair away with one hand when speaking to a student. This drove the girls wild. "Hi, Arif. How you doing?" said a group of second-year students as they passed him in the hall, giggling. "Oh, hi there, I'm fine," he responded, not actually noticing their gushing admiration. Jasmine observed their behavior and wondered if it would be out of her league to go on a date with this amazing hunk, Arif. She asked around the dorm, and according to the grapevine, he was actually single and looking for a girlfriend. That was enough encouragement for Jasmine to plan a strategy to meet him. Arif was available by appointment to help new students settle on campus and orient them on campus activities and clubs. He was also available to manage disputes at the dorm. Jasmine formulated an elaborate complaint and a list of needs in order to meet him. She got dressed in her most revealing sheer crop top and tight jeans and applied a generous amount of makeup before the appointment time. And then she went down to the student lounge smelling as sweet as a rose. Arif noticed this beautiful girl who came to speak with him and was visibly infatuated. He tried his best to give Jasmine all the pointers she needed on clubs to join on campus and how to make friends. He doubted she would have any problems in making friends, since she looked like an extrovert and she was very beautiful. Jasmine continued to find reasons to speak to Arif every second day, fantasizing about going out with him and kissing him. She couldn't understand why he wouldn't ask her out. Eventually, her desire got the better of her and she decided she would just have to ask him out. She didn't yet trust anyone on campus to tell her stories, so she just went bravely one evening and asked him to go out to the pub. Arif was flattered. Usually, he didn't accept advances from girls on campus. However, he decided to make an exception for Jasmine, the tall, beautiful brunette from the third floor. They sipped sodas at a side booth in one of the local pubs near the campus. The place was relatively quiet since it was a Tuesday night, and this suited Jasmine just fine because she had his undivided attention. They chat about studies, campus life, and all the time Jasmine wondered how she would seduce Arif and get a big hug from those strong arms. He looked like he exercised in the gym regularly and his muscles protruded from the front of a small blue t-shirt. Eventually, Jasmine threw herself on his chest and looking up like a small child asked him for a hug. He obliged by giving her a friendly hug, but wanted to keep a polite distance. Jasmine couldn't help herself. Arif was so cute, and eventually she said, "You have the strongest arms," and she snuggled up next to him. He put his arms around her shoulders as they watched the guitarist play music on one side of the pub. Jasmine tried, but she couldn't listen to the music. She was too busy looking at Arif's lips and hoping to get a kiss. They went back to the dorm and Jasmine invited Arif to her room. To find out what happens next, you have to get yourself a copy of Mrs. Somebody, what she did for that ring. Ooh! So what you all think about Jasmine inviting the dorm monitor up to her room? What do you think happened? Put it in the chat box. Let me see what you think happened. Huh? Anybody? Put it in the chat box. Cheers! I'm drinking some bubbly water. Oh, it occurred, Jasmine. Yeah. What did Jasmine do? Okay, so now I'm going to read about how Jasmine met and made friends. In her third week of classes, Jasmine was able to quickly develop a network of girlfriends. The lecturer of the introductory business class randomly placed students into groups for an assignment. Each group was supposed to meet during the week to decide on a topic, divide responsibilities for research, and develop a class presentation. Jasmine's group consisted of Ariam, Carla, Winsome, and Lara. The girls exchanged phone numbers and decided to meet the following evening at the Student Union building, which was in a central location on campus. When they finally sat down around a table to go through the details of the project, they also excitedly exchanged stories of how they came to Walter Mack University. Jasmine said, well, I grew up in Coyle, which is not too far from this part of the state, and I'm staying in Bennett Hall. Lara, a tall redhead with pallid skin, spoke up next. She stood at 5 feet 10 inches tall and was curvy by conventional standards. She had long, wild, curly hair. Well, let me tell you about myself, said the short black girl in the group. Winsome was born in the Caribbean and moved to Walter Mack to go to university. Her parents were from a wealthy family in Barbados, and they wanted their daughter to go to school abroad. She had studied diligently in her final school year, so her grades were very good, and she gained a scholarship to study at any university of her choice. People in her family circles like to send their children overseas to university. The next was Carla. Carla said, I'm just from a few miles away from Walter Mack. Carla was of Slavic background. Her parents immigrated from Czech Republic, settling in the town of Walter Mack. I guess I'm last with the intros, said the shy Asian girl in the group. I'm Ariam, and I was born in California. My parents are from Korea, and we moved to a town 4 hours east of Walter Mack when my dad got a job there. The girls lived in different student residence halls, but met a few times in the following weeks at the Student Union building to discuss their project. Eventually, they developed a great rapport and decided to continue meeting when the class project was done. This was so they could go out to campus events and other activities in the university town. This is so exciting, said Ariam. I can actually go out until 3 in the morning and nobody's around to scold me for being late. Yes. Let's go to all the frat parties this semester. So many boys, so little time, laughed Jasmine. Oh, I don't know about that, said Lara, who was a little cautious. Remember, we're here to study, right? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm also here to get my MRS, said Carla. What's your MRS? Is that a degree too? They all laughed. We certainly have 4 years to test the waters. So how many people have heard that term before? The MRS degree. Have you all heard that? Tell me in the chat box. Did you know people who went to university specifically to get the MRS? This I met a few like that in my day. Put it in the chat box. And for those who didn't hear the first time I announced it, just for participating today, everybody gets a free copy of my book, an e-copy. So if you subscribe to my website, I put a link in the chat box. I will send you a free e-copy, because when you subscribe to my website, I get your email address and I'll send you a copy of the ebook. So that's our giveaway today. Saji said no, so you've never met somebody searching for the MRS degree. Oh, I met quite a few in university. It was quite the thing at the time. All right. So now I'll tell you about some more campus shenanigans. Jasmine met with her classmates again to plan their social activities for the coming weeks. I heard that foreign guys are the best ones to date, said Carla. Where did you get that idea from? Asked Jasmine. Well, that's what some of my older cousins told me, so I believe them. Well, girls, let's just go out there and see who we can find. Jasmine's dorm had a party that weekend in the large cafeteria, and all the tables and chairs were going to be removed. People from all over campus were invited, so it was going to be a grand event. She invited her new girlfriends to the shindig and made them promise not to stand too close if she was making moves on a new guy. The girls felt it was the ideal time to discover who the potential husbands could be. The theme of the night was Toga Fest, so everybody was going to be dressed in bed sheets and cloths. Jasmine made up her mind that night if she met a boy she liked, she was going all the way. The walls of the hall were decorated with branches, and white helium balloons were scattered throughout the venue. 2 large strobe lights in front of the DJ scattered patterns of light throughout the room as the loud music pounded from speakers placed strategically around the room. Jasmine was wearing her toga, a ton of makeup, and a big smile. They all noticed her for sure. When her girlfriends arrived, they screamed, "Party time!" and dashed onto the dance floor. This was supposed to be an alcohol-free environment, but some students had a few kegs of beer and bottles of vodka in nearby rooms. For $1, one could get a shot or spike a glass of orange juice and return undetected to the hall where some older students were monitoring the event. Jasmine, Lara, Ariam, Winsome, and Carla became tipsy quickly since they were not used to drinking vodka. Jasmine spied a cute African guy and overheard some girls call him Mike. He was one of the hottest dancers on the floor, and many girls danced close to Mike to get his attention. And so Jasmine decided she would make Mike her conquest for the night. After all, her group said they would try to date foreign students. They were supposed to be better than the locals, whatever that meant. Jasmine pranced around in front of Mike and piqued his interest. He was tall, dark, and muscular. His broad face and big eyes were crowned by a huge smile of perfect white teeth. "And who are you?" he asked, noticing Jasmine for the first time. "I haven't seen you on campus before." "Well, I'm a first-year student, single and ready to mingle." By then, Carla had paired up with Nico from Greece. His naturally tan skin, longish dark hair, and huge biceps were the main attraction. Ariam had been spellbound over Roger from Lebanon because he was French-speaking. Lara was gushing when she met Yoshi from Japan. He was a hip Japanese young man with the best jeans and haircut, and he was a whole head taller than her. Winsome had been flirting with Aidan, an Irish second-year student. He was tall and skinny with short cropped black hair and the deepest blue eyes. Aidan charmed all the girls with his strong Dublin accent, and he used it to his full advantage. After a few hours of prancing, Jasmine invited Mike to check out the posters in her room. He knew what her invitation meant and followed sheepishly behind, waving farewell to his buddies, who were watching on the sidelines. "Have fun," they said, waving to him as he left. Jasmine and Mike kissed passionately as she fumbled to unlock the door to her bedroom. His big arms enfolded her and his lips swallowed hers. She could barely breathe, and her body heaved against his. "Just a minute, let me open the door," she urged as he squeezed her tightly. "Okay," he said, out of breath. Jasmine managed to open the door, and luckily her roommate was out for the night. To find out what happens next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. What do you think Jasmine did? Did she do anything or not? Gotta get a copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for the Ring, to find out. So we have paperbacks available at Amazon. It's Amazon Kindle. And if you have a Kindle reader, you can read for free from the Kindle Owners Library. So if you have a Kindle, get it out, fire it up, and you can borrow the book from the Kindle Owners Lending Library. Right? Bring out your glasses, take a little sip to celebrate with me. I'm drinking Perrier bubbly water. In the chat box who you think was the first of the girls to get married and get her MRS. Let me see what you all think in the chat box, because we can't read all the chapters, so I'm going to skip ahead to a wedding. Who was the first to get married? Let's write it down. Who was first to get her MRS? Oh, thank you, Geoffrey. Good to see you. So everyone, put in the chat box who you think was the first girl in the group to get married and get her MRS and have a campus wedding. Any guesses? Put your thoughts in the chat box. Tell me who you think. So we had Winsome, who is from Barbados, Ariam, who is Korean, Carla, who is Slavic, Lara, of Irish descent. Oh, hi Debbie, good to see you. Thanks for joining. We have Jasmine, the wild Turkish one. So who in the group was the first to get married? Of the 5 girls, can anybody guess? Anybody who heard the names of the girls from the beginning? Make a guess. Is Sachi still here? Jill? Can anybody guess who was the first to get married? I'm going to read about the campus wedding now. Anybody can guess? Okay, well, I will just tell you. The Trini, there was no Trini. Oh, Diane. Okay, so I'll tell you the names. We had Lara, who was of Irish descent. We had Winsome, who is from Barbados. We had Jasmine, of Turkish descent. We had Carla, Slavic girl, and Ariam, who was of Korean descent. So Debbie says Jasmine. Well, Jasmine likes to play around. Oh, too many to remember. Okay, so I will just tell you who I picked. I picked Winsome, the girl from Barbados, to get married first. So I'll read a few snippets from the chapter. Of course, we can't read everything tonight because you're going to get your book, but I'll read you a few snippets. The situation with Winsome. So it was a graduation and then a wedding. Some people said Ariam. Well, it didn't turn out to be Ariam in my book. So here's Winsome. Mommy, I've already bought my dress. It's so pretty. Winsome screamed into the telephone one day when she called home. Wedding dress? You mean you're still going through with this insane wedding? Asked her mother, hoping Winsome would have somehow changed her mind. You know I am, said Winsome, laughing. She had worn down her parents over the weeks with continuous calls of reassurance, and they reluctantly accepted her decision. Mommy, can you please send money for the graduation gown, rental, and photos? I really want to get the souvenir school ring too. They have so many pretty designs. Young lady, money doesn't grow on trees, you know, her mother said with a smirk in her voice. Winsome knew that she was the only child and she could probably get her parents to support her request considering her grades were good and she showed she was focused on a bright future. I got accepted into the MBA program. I'm so excited. So do you need money for the wedding reception too? My daughter is not going to have any poor shabby wedding, you know. I'm sending extra money so you can buy beautiful flowers and have a fancy cake and tasty food, said her mother. You don't need to fuss about the wedding, Mommy. It's going to be simple, said Winsome. Not at all, said her mother. I wouldn't want your in-laws to think you're from some poor, wretched family. Make sure you have a nice spread at that event. I'm paying for it. And also your Aunt Susie is coming for the graduation and the wedding. You know how she's fussy. And she loves nice decorations. Hire a good florist to fix your bouquet and put lots of flowers on the outdoor furniture since you're going to have an outdoor wedding. The orders were coming fast and furious, and the simple wedding plan was getting a little more complicated than Winsome had planned. However, if her parents wanted to send money for the wedding reception, she wouldn't refuse it. At least they had finally come to terms with her marriage. So that was just the beginning. At first, Winsome's parents did not accept the idea of getting married to somebody they didn't know. Winsome's mother, father, and Auntie Susie had flown in from Barbados to Greenwood via the international airport in Hamilton the day before. The long journey involved several connecting flights. They then rented a car to drive to Walter Mac. Winsome's family checked into one of the university hotels the night before the graduation. She met her parents at the hotel and they all hugged her and looked her over from head to toe. The family went out to dinner that night at the best restaurant she could recommend in the town. Choices were slim. It was a very small town. Why you look so skinny? You haven't eaten well, Winsome, her mother scolded. Look at my daughter. She's all grown up. You look a bit skinny, it's true, said Auntie Susie. She's just more mature. Leave her alone. She looks pretty. That's my little girl, said her father. Mommy, I'm just the right size. I really don't need to be bigger than this, said Winsome. If I had gained weight, you would tell me I look fat, right? They all laughed. People in her family were known to talk about weight and size all the time. They planned to visit neighboring cities and national parks during the week after the graduation and the wedding. And the parents hoped Winsome and Terence would join them. Terence's family also arrived the night before the graduation, and they were staying at a small hotel near Walter Mac. His mother, father, brother, and sister, as well as his grandparents, were in town for the graduation and the wedding. They couldn't wait to meet Winsome after Terence spent weeks convincing his parents to accept someone from another culture. He was a bit nervous about the first meeting of the families, which was to take place at lunchtime before the graduation. Winsome and Terence planned a family luncheon before the graduation ceremony at the local Italian restaurant, so their families would have the opportunity to become acquainted before the small wedding. They felt if there was going to be any drama, they would rather have it play out before the wedding than during the wedding. At the Italian restaurant, I'll tell you what happened. So as Winsome entered with her family, Terence and his family were already seated and waiting at a large table near the window. Both families smiled nervously at each other, waving and saying hello, 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 hello. Hello everyone, said Terence. Let me introduce you to my fiancé, Winsome. Winsome went around the table shaking hands with his family. Terence's parents gave her a kiss on her cheek, and his mother looked her over from head to toe and seemed to approve. Lovely girl, she said as she sat back down. Terence gave her an eye in case she said something out of turn. He must have had a long chat with the family, so they'd be on their best behavior. Winsome also warned her mother and aunt to hold their tongues and not say anything if it wasn't something good. So nice to finally meet you, Terence, and to meet your family, said Winston's mother. So what do you do? She already knew that Terence was managing the IT department, but wanted to ask again, for lack of something to say. So do you plan to stay there for a long time? Winsome stared at her mother, in case her questions became too intrusive. So you know how moms are. It was then Terence's mother asked her series of questions about Winsome's plan to do graduate students and who was paying for that. Well, you know, that little wedding tomorrow wouldn't be the only wedding, blurted out Winsome's mother as she piled some dessert cake on her plate. Terence's parents listened earnestly at the point. We will have a fancy wedding in a year or two in Barbados, when we can celebrate with all our family and friends. You know, several of our friends own beachfront property and large hotels, so we will have our pick as to where we'll have the reception. You're all invited, of course. You'll be well taken care of. Winsome wasn't consulted prior to this big announcement, so she was just as surprised as everyone to hear about it. So as not to be left out, Terence's mother announced that they would also stage a very large celebration in the Philippines at a gorgeous beachfront hotel owned by their family, and everyone was invited. So, to find out what happens next and all the drama at the wedding, please get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. What do you think about the moms and their behavior and trying to outdo each other? Isn't it typical of mothers, or some mothers anyway? Put your comments in the chat box. Yes, ooh la la, Bajan and Bougie, yes. Yes, KWY Bonafide, Bajan and Bougie. And it's quite a story. You should read about the wedding. Drama and more drama. But that's expected, right? When you have clash of two cultures. So everybody take a sip of water, a sip of something, get a snack, and come on back. All right, so now that was graduation and then the wedding. So we had 5 girls, 1 got married, and we had 4 more to go. And so the girls got jobs in the big city nearby. I call that big city Greenwood. Does anybody know the significance of Greenwood? KWI Bonafide, you might know. I kind of set this story in a particular state in the United States, and Greenwood has a significant story behind it. Anybody? Anybody has heard of Greenwood? Well, look it up, you will see it. So now I'm going to write about office adventures. Mostly about Jasmine and her adventures, because she's the main protagonist, although the others also get into trouble along the way. So Jasmine got work in a nice big office, and she carried on the same way she did in school. Jasmine saw a very gorgeous young man walk through the office. She overheard people call him Jim, and he worked with the IT group in another large office next to her room. Eventually, Jasmine decided to confide in her neighbor opposite to find out a little bit about Jim as he walked through their office on an assignment. "Does Jim work out?" she asked Janice. "Well, it sure looks like he does. But don't try anything with him, you know. I heard he may have a partner or something, but I'm not sure." This was no deterrent for Jasmine. In fact, she was even more determined to find out if he was dating anyone seriously, so she could perhaps fill the empty gap. The company picnic was coming up that Saturday, and it was the right time to find out. Most people would come with their significant partner, and since she was alone, she was going alone, and she planned to observe the crowd closely while socializing. When she met with her friends at the pub that Friday, the girls told her that she should not pursue an office relationship. "Jasmine, haven't you heard the saying that you should never mix business and pleasure?" asked Ariel. "It's a recipe for disaster. Leave him alone." "That's true," chimed Carla. "If it doesn't work out, you'll have to look at him every day in the office." "Well, he's actually in the room next door, so I wouldn't have to see him that much," confirmed Jasmine. "Well, I still don't think it's a good idea. My office is full of creative, cool guys. After all, I'm in advertising," said Ariel. "Some of them are really nice, but you won't catch me sleeping around with any of them. They gossip too much anyway. You should hear some of the stuff they say at lunchtime about all the girls they had seen, and too much information." "Oh, really?" said Jasmine, a bit concerned. "Well, if I do strike up a relationship with Jim, we'll have to work on being discreet and not letting folks in the office know anything." So Jasmine continued. She found Jim as soon as she went into the park for the company summer picnic and joined his team for the tug-of-war. It was a battle of the wits and fittest. Eventually, Jasmine's team managed to pull the other side across the midline drawn on the lawn. They won with flying colors. Jasmine laughed and hugged Jim instinctively, and he just smiled and hugged back. After a few games, Jim asks if she wanted to go and get some barbecue and soda. And volunteers were there serving all the participants. They were both hungry and thirsty from the day's activities and were just happy to relax and chat about Jasmine's first few weeks with the company. As Jasmine was about to leave for home, Jim asked if he could call her sometime. She wanted to scream to the high heavens at that point. Could it be so easy? She remained calm and said of course, and she gave her number. One day at the office, out of nowhere, Jim pulled Jasmine to the side of the refrigerator in the IT kitchen and stole a kiss. "Jim, we shouldn't be doing this here. Someone will see us," protested Jasmine. Before she could say another word, he planted a kiss squarely on her lips, and she couldn't resist. She ran her fingers through his mass of curly hair as he hugged and kissed her greedily. He then pressed her against the wall, and they continued kissing, completely unaware that one of the vice presidents had passed and observed them through the glass window of the kitchen. He stopped and stared for a few seconds, and his jaw dropped. Just then, Jasmine got a glimpse of him out of the corner of her eye, and she pushed Jim away. "Mr. Khan is watching! Mr. Khan is watching!" She was out of breath. To find out what happens next, you have to get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. So what do you think happened with Jim and Jasmine in the office? Anybody? Oh, I see I have some Greenwood, Indiana. No, it's in Oklahoma, actually. So, Jim and Jazzy up to no good, being spotted by a VP who was passing. Can you imagine the scandal in the office? Office drama. Office drama is always quite a bit of fun, actually. You can't leave that out of any book. Now, I'm going to read about some of the antics. So the book started in the 1990s. There was no internet, but then continued in the 2000s. So internet came and online dating started. So I'll tell you about some adventures. Because our girls remained single for a long time, just dating this one and that in this story. Lara and Jasmine were bursting with stories of strange encounters when they met people online. From one man who forgot his wallet to another who had multiple interests in men and women. They couldn't believe what had happened in such a short time of online dating. "That's why I told you girls to be careful who you bring to your place," said Carla in a motherly tone. "Lots of unconventional people roam the city." Jasmine had just completed an experiment the day before by joining a male chat room online, pretending to be a man. "You did what?" asked her friends in chorus. "I signed into a male chat room. Nobody could see me. Men were writing messages about their dating strategies." "Well, that's not honest, Jasmine," said Ariel. "Well, the men in this chat room were not honest either." "Would you like to hear what I found out?" So she was able to get everyone's attention immediately, and they huddled closely to hear more. One man discussed his strategy of meeting 4 women in the same day and not having to spend a cent on any of them. She called him the serial dater. He would invite the women to the same coffee shop and space out the visits in 2.5-hour segments. He estimated 2 hours for each date and half an hour to relax and refresh in between. What a strategy. He can meet someone at 9, at 11:30, at 2, and then at 4:30 on a Saturday. He could buy himself a coffee and a snack before the women arrived, because they always went to the counter to get their own, and then they joined him. They would chat for a while, and then he would say, "Oh, I have to leave shortly." The women went on their way, and he prepared for the next date, and the next, and the next, sometimes going to the bathroom to freshen up before the next person arrived. Continued Jasmine. Now that's really clever. Yes, but who wants to be a part of his assembly line of dates? Everyone was confused. Now I'm going to be suspicious anytime a man asks me to meet at a cafe for a date, said Lara. Another strategy Jasmine found out was the technique of dating several women at one time and never having any of them find out about the others. She said she felt so annoyed with this conversation, but she couldn't reveal herself because she wanted to learn more about the strategies. So she remained incognito. This man discussed how he had a serious girlfriend who lived and worked in Greenwood. However, he met a beautiful woman who lived and worked in a western suburb of Mounston, and she would never come into Greenwood because she had everything she needed right there in her town. And he couldn't help but love another woman who lived in a suburb east of Greenwood called Tremor. She was beautiful and needed lots of attention. So, even though the man lived and worked downtown Greenwood, he dedicated his Saturdays and Sundays to his Tremor love. On weekends, her ex-husband kept the children. She was too busy with work and taking care of children during the week. The first part of the week, the serial dater would visit his Mounstown girlfriend because she was always busy with family on weekends. The middle to the end of the week was spent in quality time on evenings with his downtown best girlfriend. He estimated that everybody was happy and they never needed to hear about each other because they would never meet. Not only was it possible, but when Jasmine went incognito, she learned that one or two of the other men also practiced this to varying degrees. Ladies, you have to be vigilant. Don't end up as part 1 or part 2 or part 3 in a man's stage show. So listeners, what do you think about that strategy? And the book is based on true stories, I'll have you know. Okay? So most of what I talk about, I've heard from people. I've seen it myself. I don't know, I wouldn't tell you if it was me or a friend or what, but most of the book is based on true stories. So what do you think about the assembly line dating scene? Oh, Debbie says typical womanizing. Yes, unfortunately, we have to deal with that. Strategy is important. He was a cheapskate. Yes. We meet all kinds along the way. What can we do? We have to be vigilant in playing the dating game, because for many it is a game. So, but if you're aware of the strategies, that helps. It just helps to be aware. Take a sip. Oh, Jill said, not for me, thanks. I know. There's too much to keep up with them and their antics. Now I'm going to read about one fella that Jasmine met. She met a fella called Rick. And she was so infatuated with Rick, they met him at a really fancy club. Rick told her, let's see. They met at a club. She had heard quite a few movie personalities would hang around that particular club. And Rick said, I'm in between projects at the moment, but I usually work on some really high-profile movies and documentaries. In fact, right now I've been asked to consider an important movie coming up with a really big star. Wow, that sounds amazing, said Jasmine. Who is it? If I told you, I'd have to kill you, said Rick, laughing. It's a highly confidential situation, you know. Jasmine was quite impressed to meet a man who worked with high-profile stars. She couldn't wait to tell Carla, Ariam, and Lara. What a catch! When they were in the ladies' room, Jasmine blurted out Rick's story. But did he tell you who he was working with? Asked Lara. Of course not. This type of stuff is highly confidential, said Jasmine with authority. Isn't he so cute? Can't wait to test the goods. Jasmine, just get to know the man a little bit before you hop into bed with him, please, said Ariam. I know. Oh, but he's so irresistible. Did you see the body? They all saw his body and they agreed he was a hottie. They had to keep an eye on Jasmine to be sure she left the club with them and not with Rick. That could wait for another day when she met him on neutral territory. Jasmine and Rick exchanged phone numbers before she left with friends. He held Jasmine's hand romantically and kissed her hand, looking into her eyes. I'm gonna call you every day, Chickie, he said. She chuckled at her new name and looked forward breathlessly to his calls. Now, ladies in the chat, tell me, if you met a guy who said he was in between jobs and everything was confidential, would you believe him? Would you? Tell me in the chat room section here. Would you believe him? Let me know what you think of this Rick character. So Rick called Jasmine in the morning before she left for work. Then he called to see how she was doing during the lunch break. Then he called at night when she returned home from work. Jasmine fell head over heels with him. She couldn't remember a man paying that much attention to her in a long time. Jasmine had several major projects to complete that week, and so even though it was tempting to go out with Rick, she had to decline his many offers to meet for a drink, meet for coffee, go for a walk, all other suggestions until the end of the week. On Saturday, however, she was completely free, and he seized the moment along with good weather to suggest they go for a long walk and a picnic at the waterfront. That Saturday night, Jasmine did all her chores, and then Sunday she was completely free for Rick. They took a drive out to the countryside in his convertible on Sunday afternoon and enjoyed stopping at a quaint tea house for cake and coffee. Without thinking, Jasmine invited Rick to her condominium for a nightcap. By that time, Jasmine owned a one-bedroom condominium in an older building in the city. The lovely living room was open onto an outdoor porch through glass sliding doors. Beautiful place. As Rick walked in, he praised her for her taste in decorating, and he loved the large windows and the view of the city. Your place is lovely. You did a great job decorating it. He stayed for the night. And the next day, Rick slept over at Jasmine's condominium many times in the following month. And one day he mentioned on the phone that he needed to have a serious discussion. Jasmine wondered what it could be. What was so important? Why couldn't he say it over the phone? Was he going to break up with her? She would be devastated. That evening after work, Jasmine felt like she was holding her breath, waiting for Rick to arrive with his news. Jasmine fixed Rick a special dinner that night, enticing to stay over. After dinner, as they sat hugging on the sofa watching a movie, Rick mentioned that his roommate had skipped out and he was stuck paying an enormous rent at his apartment. He wondered if Jasmine could let him move in. He was in between projects and finances were short at the time. So to find out what happened next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody. What she did for that ring. Do you think Jasmine let Rick move in? What do you think? Tell me in the chat box. Do you think he moved in? Would you let Rick in if he was in between jobs and his roommate skipped out on him? What do you think Jasmine did? Now, for everyone who joined us today, you can get an e-version of Mrs. Somebody if you subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com books. I put the link in the chat box. So subscribe to my website and you can get a free ebook. Just do me a favor when you read the book, put some comments on Amazon, what you thought about the book, right? Let's see, KWI said, no, loser Rick, bye. Well, you should see what Jasmine did. It's quite the story and it goes for a while. What is another listener think? Do you think Jasmine let Rick move into her place? Remember, he dealt with high-profile movie stars. He was just in between jobs, in between projects, he said. Anybody else? What do you think? Put your comments in the chat box. Going to do one more reading for you after lots of planning and dating and matchmaking and all sorts of procedures too, because the girls got Botox and all, after like a decade or two, Botox became popular and the Scarsdale diet, and I talk about all the fads during the 2000s, all the various fads of dieting and adjusting the body to stay young. They were young, but the years kept piling on. So as they're approaching the late 30s, things were getting a little desperate, or they felt desperate. So I'll tell you what Jasmine did. And this is going to be the last reading for today. But a funny or sad reading, the way you might, I'm not sure how you would look at it. But the chapter is called Outrageous Planning. I've bought my wedding dress, Jasmine announced to Ariam and Lara when they met the following week. Jasmine was 39 and going to be 40 soon. Jasmine had invited her friends over for a special meeting. What do you mean by that? You haven't even found a good guy yet, laughed Lara. Well, I was looking at dresses online and I saw the one I want to wear on my wedding day, said Jasmine. The price was right too. So I thought, why bother waiting? I may not see anything great again, and I plan to get married soon, I told you. Are you insane? Who does that? So what will you do with the dress now? Asked Ariam, completely amused. First things first, I have to go on a diet and exercise, said Jasmine. I bought it one size smaller, so I'm going to have to try to fit into it. Her friends sincerely believed Jasmine was losing her mind. A wedding dress that was too small wasn't normal behavior. Just buying a wedding dress without finding the husband was not normal behavior. Jasmine had read somewhere in a magazine about manifesting what you wanted by creating conditions for things to come into your life. A person had to act and believe what they wanted was already part of his life, and it would happen. So Jasmine decided to hang the dress on one side of her bedroom, and she showed her friends. They loved the beautiful violet color and the jeweled area gathered at the shoulders. This dress was kept neatly in a plastic covering, and Jasmine planned to look at it every day to manifest a husband into her life. Ariam and Lara felt Jasmine was taking the manifesting too far, but maybe she would eventually get her wish. So, to find out what happened next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. That was the last reading from the book. Do you think Jasmine was able to find her perfect guy, her Mr. Right? Do you think she became Mrs. Somebody as she hoped? Tell me what you think in the chat box. And again, for taking part in our book reading today, I'm offering everyone a free copy, a free ebook, when you subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com/books. So you just go on to the link and subscribe to my website, put in your email, and I'll send you a copy of the ebook. So tell me what you think, Jasmine. Did you find her ideal husband, her ideal mate? Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. The book has many stories. Some would consider it pure madness, but as I said, the book is based on true stories. So just imagine that when you're reading it, lots of these things actually happen to people I know. Some might have been me too, but I'm not telling. Anybody has any questions for me? Put it in the chat box. Tell me what you think happened with Jasmine in the end. You can get a paperback from Amazon.com, ebooks on Amazon Kindle, and if you have a Kindle reader, you can borrow the book from the Kindle Owners Lending Library for free, right? Don't think it was in the stars from McGill University. Well, you never know with Jasmine and the manifesting. Maybe it worked out, just maybe. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the book readings. Now I only gave you a few snippets of the book because there are many crazy stories, true stories, but with fictitious characters. So you need to read that book and find out some more. Any questions? Any comments? Thank you so much for joining me today. And that's it. Thanks so much. It was very exciting reading from my first romance novel. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye, everybody, and take care. Thanks so much for joining. Bye now. Thank you Mrs. Birch. Thanks for joining in. Thanks, KWI Bonify. Thanks for joining in. So everyone, remember to subscribe to my website so you can get a free copy, an ebook, when you send your email. Okay, take care. Thanks, Jill. We'll see you next time we do a reading. Take care. Bye-bye.